Hello, American literature students, and welcome to week number 4 of our semester. All right, I know many of you are anxious to get your grades on your essays, and I am working on those. I've given several of the essays from the second week a first reading. Nobody's gotten a grade yet because I always read every essay twice. But I wanted to take a break today to actually put this week's lesson together, which includes the slideshow and includes the discussion questions for your essay. And of course, I had to reread everything to make sure that I understood it as well. So, um, so all of that's been put together. You may notice that I'm not actually at home right now, that I'm actually in a different place. I'm actually house sitting for one of my colleagues at Darton. And the advantage is that I am now surrounded by a bunch of cute dogs and get to play with them a little bit. In fact, they're chasing a tennis ball now. So that is where I'm at now. That's why you see the trees in the background. The other benefit is, as soon as I get done with this video, I'm going to take about a 5-minute break and I'm going to jump in this swimming pool, which you may not be able to see behind me, but you may hear the water splashing a little bit. All right, so what about this week's readings? There's only 2 questions on the essay thing that I'm actually asking you. One is to discuss slavery. Our founding fathers, in fact, this is actually one of my favorite weeks because the founding fathers, a lot of people would have you believe right now, were united on all fronts and they loved each other and they were all on the same page about how to start a new nation and what when the Constitution was drawn up, everybody was in favor of it, rah rah rah. When the Declaration of Independence was drawn up, all 13 colonies jumped right on board and said, "Yeah, let's do this." You're going to find out when you read this week's readings that none of that is true. Our founding fathers fought with each other, and they fought bitterly. They had different ideas about what our country, this new country that they were creating in the 1770s and then again in the 1780s, was supposed to look like and what its principles were. And you're going to see that there was quite a bit of disagreement that had to be hammered out. Now, in Washington, D.C. today, there's a lot of disagreement, right? Well, that's nothing new for our country. That's been true ever since before our current Constitution was written. So, so think of this as an education in the fact that our founding fathers did disagree and they did have arguments and they were kind of vicious, and that trend that's going on in D.C. now, where people are either Republican or Democrat and are refusing to bargain with each other and things like that, is nothing new. So our 4 authors this week: Benjamin Franklin. The Way to Wealth is kind of a greatest hits of his Poor Richard's Almanac. This was the prologue of a book that he had published about his 25 greatest moments of the Poor Richard's Almanac. Poor Richard's Almanac was known for a lot of sayings that we actually hear today, like a penny saved is a penny earned, early to bed, early to rise, makes man healthy, wealthy, and wise. These all came out of Poor Richard's Almanac. And Benjamin Franklin didn't invent all of them. Some of them he borrowed from other authors, but he basically put them all together in one place. The Way to Wealth is kind of a nice little story about a guy that is anonymous. He's actually Richard Saunders. That's the name of the Poor Richard, is Richard Saunders. Richard Saunders, which is a fictional character created by Benjamin Franklin. But Richard Saunders here's this old man giving a speech in which this old man repeats several Poor Richard expressions. And the people in the crowd are like, "Yeah, that's right, we need to be frugal, we need to work hard, we can't worry about taxes when we're taxing ourselves by being lazy," and so on and so forth. And we should not take out a bunch of debt to buy nice clothes. Then the store in which the man is standing in front of opens for business, and these same people that were just saying, "Yeah, debt is bad and we can live with old clothes instead of new clothes," go right into the store and buy new clothes credit. So it's kind of we all say that, "Yeah, I need to eat better," and then we go and have a cheeseburger or something like that. "Yeah, I don't need to take out any debt to buy nice things, I should be content with what I have," and then we take our credit card and we go buy something expensive and take 6 months paying it off, something like that. So this is nothing new, but this is a nice little bunch of expressions by Poor Richard. Information for those who had removed to America is actually interesting in that it is actually remember last week, some of you probably wrote papers about how America's a land of opportunity, and if you work hard, you can make lots of wealth. What Benjamin Franklin is doing here, he actually wrote this for the people of England, and says, "Yeah, but Not so fast. There's not a lot of wealth in America. You can make a living, but you're not going to become super rich. And if you already own lands in England and you already have a title in England, you're better off staying in England. Because there's nothing for you in America, because people in America don't recognize dukes and earls and viscounts and all these other royal titles. All the people in America recognize is, are you good at shoeing a horse? Well, then we can use you as a blacksmith. Are you good at growing lots of crops in a small space? Then we can use you as a farmer. Are you good at whatever? Then we can use you for your utility, not so much because you already have wealth to begin with or because you already have a title to begin with. So this is a warning by Benjamin Franklin that anybody with a title or wealth that's coming to America to try to increase that wealth or be recognized for that title, not so fast. The people that are valuable in the United States, this new nation, are those that actually have skills that can be put to use in order to help build a nation. So that's what that one is. Then we go to Thomas Jefferson, the framing of the Declaration of Independence. You're going to see the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, not the one that you read in school. You're going to see what Thomas Jefferson wrote at first, because Thomas Jefferson and some of his friends got together and said, we need to declare our independence from England. They have abused their powers too much. The king is going crazy. We need to declare our independence and start a new nation. And of course, others, including John Adams, who disagreed with him on many things, all said, Mr. Jefferson, you should write this declaration. So Jefferson pulled out his little feather pen and his little inkwell and his little parchment, and he wrote out a first draft of the Declaration of Independence, which is what you're going to read in this actual story. You're going to see parts that are in brackets or that are italicized that had to be stricken or added to the Declaration after his first draft in order to get all 13 colonies to agree to sign it. Even then, there was one person who refused, but it didn't matter because the rest of the people from his colony signed it for him. Also, getting all 13 colonies on board was not as easy as you would think. You would think that all 13 colonies would have said, yeah, we've had enough of this king. Let's start our own nation. This is great. Not so fast. It took some convincing to get people from Pennsylvania and people from New York and I think Delaware to actually agree to sign this. And Georgia and South Carolina weren't going to sign it until some of the slavery restrictions were stricken from the Declaration, because they were still importing slaves. They were still using slaves to run their plantations and or work on their plantations, excuse me. And they didn't want that part in the Declaration of Independence. So you'll see that get stricken. So even though the Declaration of Independence, it was supposed to be signed sometime in June, but it took until July the 4th to actually get all 13 colonies to agree to sign it. And then finally it was like, oh, thank goodness, let's get this thing signed and send it off to the king and declare ourselves a new nation. So there's a little bit of a wake-up call for you in that one. And the Federalist Papers will also be a wake-up call. Thomas Paine from Common Sense. This is from his introduction. Common Sense was actually a book. But you're going to get a part of the introduction where he says, hey, folks, open your eyes. We are being abused by this king. We are being abused by England. We need to start our own nation. Why would we still live in these shackles and chains? And then the Federalist Papers. There are many people that follow politics right now, and I'm specifically thinking of the Tea Party, but there are others as well, who say that the Constitution is the law of our land, and it is. That is correct. And they want you to believe that the Founding Fathers wrote this Constitution, and everybody agreed on it, and everybody was happy about it, and everybody thought this Constitution was the perfect law of the land. When you read these Federalist Papers, you're going to find that that is absolutely not true. The Federalist Papers were written by John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison as a way to try to convince people to have this new Constitution. The United States, after the Revolutionary War, were under something called the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation were basically all the states, all the power was within the states, and the federal government was very, very weak and had no power, almost no power whatsoever. For example, each state could print its own currency. There was no United States currency. Each state called its own state militias, but there was no national army. In fact, Ben Franklin's actually going to comment on that in the those that were removed to America. So there were people that did not want a new Constitution because they were doing quite well under the Articles of Confederation. Thank you very much. And so both Alexander Hamilton in the opening and James Madison in Federalist number 10 are going to talk about something called faction. Faction discussion gets a little bit complicated, but essentially what faction is if somebody's benefiting under the current government, then they're not going to want to make changes. They're going to want to keep the status quo in place. I think that this is going to actually apply to today because there are big moneyed interests who are doing just fine, thank you very much, and they are spending lots and lots of money to make you think that the actual way that the United States is right now is the best way to run the country. Why? Because they're making billions of dollars while paying a minimum wage that's not even livable. Or they are making millions of dollars and getting government bailouts when they do fail, when the average person might be losing his home, or somebody might be thrown out of a job with no notice. So faction is something that you need to be careful of even today. This is what Hamilton and Madison are arguing against in these Federalist Papers. And this is why they're saying, hey, we need a new constitution with a stronger central government than what we have now. Because if we don't, these 13 colonies are going to become 13 independent nations. And that's not good for the United States whatsoever. And that'll cause more problems than anything else. So all this talk about how the Founding Fathers wrote this Constitution and all were in favor of it and all said this was the greatest thing in the world, you're going to learn that not everybody was for a new Constitution. And it took a lot of talking and a lot of arguing on the part of these three men. You're not going to read anything by John Jay because it's not included in our book, but Alexander Hamilton and James Madison to get a new Constitution written, which is the Constitution that we now base our entire government on. It's the same Constitution you can go to the Archives building in Washington, D.C. and look at if you want to. So, thus this week's readings is designed. This week is designed to make you question what you believe about the United States government and United States history, and that's a good thing. Maybe you've been getting the simplified version and the rah version, and you need to be awakened to the fact that this country was born very painfully. It took a lot of pains to get this country started in the first place, and we don't continue to fight for what's best for the country and all the people in it. Small factions will take over, and those factions will actually run your lives and basically enslave you legally. If it's not already happening already, which I would argue it is, that day is coming. And it'll look like something right out of a science fiction novel, like something out of like 1984, or like Animal Farm, or like A Brave New World, or anything like that. So, that's it. That's this week. So I am working on getting those second and third week ones graded. Remember that if you show improvement, and I'm going to try to give you a great deal of comments on the second week. Third week I might not be able to. I might not be able to get to those till the end of this week. But the second week I'm going to try to give you plenty of comments so that you'll know what you're doing well and what you actually need to improve upon. And then you can apply that to the rest of your essays. And if I see significant improvement, I will drop the lowest non-zero essay grade. Zeros will still factor in, but I will drop the lowest zero non-essay grade. Also bear in mind that next week for Washington Irving, your due date will actually be not on Friday, but it'll be early in the week because I have to submit grades by the 30th, which is not this Thursday, but the next Thursday. So I'll remind you of that again and give you all kinds of reminders. So that's it. Have a great week. Enjoy these Founding Fathers. Enjoy learning a little something about American history in the process. And I'll speak to you again next week.